All right, it's time for a polling update. The good folks at National Public Affairs did a polling roundup. Let's get to it. First up, there's a brand new national poll. I think you all know what I think about national polls. They do show momentum and trends, so it's worth at least acknowledging them and looking at this brand new CBS YouGov poll, which shows that President Trump seems to be immune from federal indictment charges. Currently, Trump is leading Florida Governor Ron DeSantis by 28 points. Now, that's a 2-point bump for Trump since the last poll they did in April of that year, which shows that these charges, both the ones in New York and now the ones we saw down there in Florida, don't seem to be hurting his chances, at least nationally, because 80% of Republican voters say that Trump should be president even if convicted. But what I found most surprising about this poll, the only person who is getting double digits is Ron DeSantis at just over 20%. And it's Mike Pence, Nikki Haley, and Tim Scott. They're the only people getting more than 1% nationally. Now, the reason that matters is because of those polling requirements that the RNC has instituted to get into that first debate. You do have several at 1%. That's important. But when you think about the competition that Trump faces, it still looks like a Trump-DeSantis race. There's also another new poll out from Rasmussen Reports where it shows that Trump is still the preferred candidate in a head-to-head matchup against DeSantis. He's holding a 28-point lead here. And when you look at all other candidates combined, that only gets you 8%. That's not good if you're another candidate. Let's get to those early polls. We've got one here from National Public Affairs where they conducted a monthly poll in South Carolina that began in April. It's not commissioned for any specific candidate or committee. And their May numbers show that President Trump remained the front runner in South Carolina, although that lead has slightly narrowed, 38 to 23, down from 43-21 over DeSantis, with Haley, who had begun at 19%, actually falling to 15% in South Carolina. Interesting there because Haley, the former two-term governor. Moving over to Iowa, Trump holds a 42-point lead over DeSantis among those who say they will participate in the caucus. Trump currently at 63%, DeSantis at 20%, Mike Pence at 5%, Nikki Haley at 5%, Tim Scott at 3%, Vivek Ramaswamy at 2%, Sununu at 1%, Hutchinson at 1%, Doug Burgum doesn't even register at 0 points. You also can look at this Emerson poll among all voters. Trump's leading Biden by 10 points in a general election matchup. And in a DeSantis-Biden head-to-head matchup, DeSantis leads by 7. Now, here's another thing, though. They went in and started to look at polls about the overall mood in the country. President Biden's approval has recently ticked up slightly, but let's be honest, it's been pretty historically low. He remains deeply and historically unpopular. Only 41% approving of him, 55% disapproval. That is not good. In fact, Biden's approval rating is worse than any president in 80 years, except for that of Jimmy Carter. So you're number 2. But it's not a big surprise that Americans are not happy with where the country is headed. A majority, 60% of Americans say the country's on the wrong track. That makes sense when you think about inflation and interest rates. It marks a slight improvement since they last went into the poll with an average of 73% at that time, saying that Americans thought the country's in the wrong track, which was the highest in 7 years. Gallup recently also conducted another poll collecting Americans' opinion regarding federal income taxes. This is interesting, though, I thought, because for the first time in 20 years, more people think that their taxes are unfair than do not. The last time a plurality of Americans felt their federal income tax burden was unfair goes all the way back to 2001, which is right before the Bush tax cuts came into place. Well, before we go, I want to throw a little bit of a curveball your way. Talk about some polling among baseball fans. They were asked about those new rules that went into place this year. Interestingly enough, if you're a big fan of baseball, you notice the game has gotten a little shorter by about a half hour so far. And interestingly, a majority of baseball fans, including the ones who really love baseball, agree with those new rule changes, specifically the pitch clock, which has made the game a little bit faster and shortened the overall length of the games. which has been interesting. Well, that's your polling roundup for the week. Thanks to the folks at National Public Affairs. Tell me what you think you'd like to see more of, both politically and maybe some fun ones too. Well, if you enjoyed this video, click the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell to make sure that you never miss another video.